If you would have told me 5 years ago that owning a car rental business would have completely changed my life, I wouldn't have believed you. Well, that's exactly what it did, and that's why I'm able to be at the beach right now while running a successful Turo business. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not super wealthy from owning a car rental business. I do very well. I'm not here at the beach on taking a private jet here or going out on yachts, but we did have some nice steak dinners. And Turo and my other car rental platforms like Private Rentals and HyreCar, Getaround, all of them have allowed me to actually come to Florida now for 2 weeks without having to work, which is really nice because I value my freedom more than anything. Now, a lot of people ask, can you actually make money renting cars on Turo? Well, I'm here to tell you, yes, of course you can. And I want to walk you through my journey, what I discovered, and why it became such a profitable business. So just to give you guys a little recap on my journey. So I started doing research on the internet because I'm an entrepreneur. I started out being an entrepreneur when I was 12 years old. I went to flea markets, sold everything from pocket knives to old video games, anything I could get my hands on, actually with my grandma. And the flea market's fun, it teaches you a lot of skills. From that point on, I worked a few jobs. I went to Wendy's, which, guys, do not work fast food if you don't have to. That was by far the worst and hardest job I ever had. So Wendy's, don't go there. But from there I worked at Wendy's. I realized I didn't really like having a job. I liked the freedom of being an entrepreneur. And even if it has more ups and downs and it's not as steady, having control of your freedom is a major deal to me. From that point, I went to Kmart. And Kmart was a lot better than Wendy's, but still working for somebody, I can do it, but I didn't prefer it. Then went to Penn State. I got my finance degree. Then from that point, I was thinking, what am I going to do next? Am I going to get a real job, as my parents would say, or other family members? Or was I going to risk it all and do a business? So from that point, I got into some e-commerce, had a few stores that were successful enough that I realized that taking a job wasn't for me. And I was offered a pretty high-paying job too, but turned it down to explore my own journey here with entrepreneurship. At that point, lots of failures in between that and Turo. So had a lot of other businesses I was trying out. Some of them worked, some of them didn't, from drop shipping to e-com, all the typical things you guys probably see in Facebook ads targeting you about how to make money. But then I stumbled across this thing about renting cars. So I didn't know too much about cars. I was always really interested in real estate and always thought it'd be cool to be a real estate investor and flip properties, rent them out. But I never thought about renting cars. And then I saw an ad for a company called HyreCar. And I thought, wow, so you can actually rent cheap economy cars to Uber drivers. Thought, wow, that makes sense. And then I was looking at the numbers. People were saying that they're making upwards of $1,000 a car. And keep in mind, these cars are like $5,000 or $6,000 vehicles. So what I did, took some money I had saved up. I had about like 10 grand just sitting there to invest and bought 2 economy cars. One was a Mitsubishi Mirage and the other one was a Chevy Sonic, which I don't think they make those cars anymore. They're both older, right? They were both 2012s. Anyways, listed the car on HyreCar. Nothing happened for the first, I think it was like 3 days. I was getting a little discouraged, but I thought, oh, things could always turn around still. And then from that point, we got a booking. And I was so excited, right? First booking, I was like, oh, I'm a genius, this is going to work. Well, the car goes out, and not even 1 hour after, the guest starts calling me, saying the car is overheating with coolant issues, come get it. And yep, that's what happens sometimes when you buy a junk car and don't get it checked out. But it did have coolant problems, I had to refund the guest. But what I did from there, I had the car fixed, and I learned from that mistake. And that's why every car I get now, I get safety checked, inspected, and drive it around for at least a week before putting it on the platform. Because when you source cars like that from auctions and other places, it's not always the most reliable source. Sorry, I'm getting a little out of breath here. And I was running a little bit earlier this morning. And anyways, got the car fixed, put it back on HyreCar, and the second rental, even though I was discouraged, went out for a month, and I made over $1,000 on the vehicle. And the renter brought it back in decent shape. I was thrilled. From there, we actually got both cars on the platform. Then I had my first headache with the renter. They actually stole my car, and this is my first time dealing with this. I had a GPS installed though because I did a lot of research on the car rental business and realized that you have to have trackers on this stuff or it's not going to work. So I was able to call the police, get the car towed back, and that's when I dealt with my first insurance claim. So first, they were telling me, oh, we can't do anything for you, and we're not covering this. But then I started researching insurance, figuring out how it works. And I hired somebody that was an insurance consultant to advise me. And since the guest damaged this car so bad, they were like living out of this thing, drugs all found through it, paraphernalia, all that fun stuff. We were able to get the car totaled for a biohazard because there was fentanyl in the vehicle. And this was a car I paid $5,000 for. Insurance wrote me a check for $8,000. Plus, I rented the car for 2 months and made a couple $1,000s doing that too. So now I was like, okay, I'm spreading my wings. I'm doing good. So I bought another HyreCar, but I started running into more issues. Like all the guests seemed to be a little bit worse than I imagined. And then I did some research and I'm like, okay, well HyreCar is not the only platform here, which I can't believe I didn't know about Turo first. I just saw the ad for HyreCar. But then I saw an ad for a company called Getaround, which seemed like it had better reviews. People had better experiences with their guests, and it was coming new to Pittsburgh. And the way I found out about Getaround, they saw my HyreCar profile and they were trying to expand in the Pittsburgh area because nobody had any Getaround cars there. And I'm in Pittsburgh, so I called them and they told me about this really cool program they had where they were doing incentives to get people to put their cars in certain zip codes. So in Pittsburgh, there were 3 zip codes that received bonuses if you put your car in them. Each one was like a $1,000 bonus, plus they did guaranteed earnings on the car for 3 months of $1,200 a month. And what was great about that, even if the car didn't rent once, you still got the bonus. So what I did, found the 3 zip codes, I filled them up with 8 cars. And each one of those cars I got a $1,000 bonus on, so that was $8,000 right there, plus guaranteed earnings for 3 months. So that was 24 grand on top of that, and that would put me at 32,000. So we did 32,000 on Getaround, but then the incentives ran out. Getaround really wasn't taking off, and I was running around like like a chicken with its head cut off, because I was going to all these 3 zip codes. And remember, these aren't like right next to each other. I'm in the city of Pittsburgh, and I'm driving like 20 minutes in between each to go to each car, because you still have to check them out, detail them, make sure people didn't damage them, file insurance claims, all that stuff. So it's not as simple as, yeah, just leave your car here and then go check on it in a month. And I was getting worn out. I was like, this money is really not worth it. It's like, sure, that was good with the incentives, but after that, it wasn't making as much sense to me. And that's when I finally, the last one I discovered was Turo. So put a car on Turo and it was magical. It rented within the very first day. Then from there, I was like, okay, let me get a location to put these cars. Because at first I started at my house and then I was renting parking lots in different areas. And I'm like, okay, let's actually get a location here. And from that point on, things were never the same. The cars kept renting, the clientele was better, but believe me, there's still headaches. I still deal with insurance all the time, which I don't even mind because we do very well when we have insurance claims. But compared to the other platforms, I was like, okay, this one actually makes sense. This is one I can get behind, right? So started renting out the cars on Turo, and then 3 years later, from being on Turo, was able to scale to over 50 cars by reinvesting my profits and just kept building the business. Then we also got into private rentals, which was really great. And we'll talk about that in some other videos too. I don't recommend private rentals for everybody, but if you understand Turo, you understand the fundamentals, private rentals can also be a great addition to the fleet. I just make sure I vet my customers way more than I would on the apps, just because the insurance and there's a lot of other factors that go into play, which I'll elaborate on more. Oh, it's beautiful out here, guys. But yeah, I've been here in Florida for 2 weeks now. Really need to shave, as you can see, but I've just been kind of being a little bit more leisurely here, but still wanted to make at least one video while on this trip. So you guys, like early on in the career, once I started renting on Turo, people ask, well, how did you go from 8 cars to over 50? Well, I wouldn't say the first challenge was optimizing the profile. I learned a lot of different settings when it comes to Turo, how to make sure you're receiving the most amount of money possible with your bookings, how to keep guests happy with communication, how to deal with insurance claims, which is probably one of the biggest obstacles starting out. That's why a lot of people get out of the business. And number one, figuring out the right cars. So I started learning how to do market analysis of areas. I have a variety of different tools I use to determine a car's profitability. Based on one, its reliability, but then every area in the United States, it's all different. Every single time we work with the clients at carrentalcoach.com, we make sure that we look at their area in depth. It takes me a few hours to do a proper market analysis, but then we figure out the best cars based on reliability and also what's working in the area. If you want us to perform a market analysis for you, you can actually go to carrentalcoach.com, fill out our quick 60-second survey and see if you qualify to work with us. But if you do, we'll basically show you everything from A to Z on how to start a car rental business and work with you hand in hand to make sure that you're making as much money as possible. But then came scaling, right? So there was those first couple things at the beginning, but then scaling the business, like how do you get funding, right? Well, I did a mixture of things. I had some cash saved up and I kept reinvesting profits too, because I was lucky that, to have some other businesses. I was able to earn some money, but I did a few other creative things too. One, took out interest-free credit cards, which that was huge. I was able to get $50,000 in interest-free credit cards. They got me a lot of rewards points, and the interest wasn't due for 2 years on them, so I was able to pay off the cars I bought with that. And then from that point, since I structured the company properly. I put it under an LLC. I was able to get business funding. I was able to take out $150,000 to grow the fleet through an SBA loan. Then from there, really, it's just been reinvesting profits. Cars get totaled, just use that money to buy another car, that kind of thing. Source the majority of our cars from auctions, but scaling was a big issue. So we work with a lot of different partners too to help people get funding. Same ones that I've used, and that was key to it. You don't want to be one of those people that gets into the business, buys a really expensive car, and then you have a crazy payment. You know, you don't want to pay $800, $900 a month on a car when these vehicles are bringing in around $1,000 to $1,200. It doesn't make any sense. You're not going to make any money after maintenance, repairs, insurance, all the other costs that you can imagine. So I am a big believer in economy cars. Not that you can't make money doing luxury, but it's a completely different business model. And I think economy is definitely the most profitable. And I do have a degree in finance, so I do know how to do some numbers. Then some other challenges I faced. So one, I was naive when I started. I was too trusting of customers, especially when doing private rentals. For example, you know, I had one private renter. It was my most profitable car ever. It brought me over $22,000 in its first year. This was a $8,000 car. That was amazing. That was the best one I ever had. But then when I was doing private rentals, you know, I wasn't doing my research. I wasn't doing enough background checks on my customers. I was being too trusting, I was being naive, and probably a little bit money hungry, to be honest. I just saw, they have money, let's just rent the car to them. I didn't think about the headaches. Had another woman, seemed like your typical sweet old grandma, you know, maybe she'd be the one to bake you some cookies, something like that. But started telling me she was taking the car for her cancer treatments. So I feel a lot of sympathy and empathy for people going through that. I've had a lot of family deal with cancer. It's not fun. And, you know, I thought, oh, it's nice, she'll be able to rent this car, take it to her treatments. But then she stopped paying me. And I let her go for a little bit because the nature of it. She paid me for like 2 months and everything was going well. I felt bad for her, the whole cancer thing. But then I started tracking the car and I realized she wasn't going to cancer treatments. And then after she completely blocked my number, and then I looked at my GPS, she had it taken out of the car. And these devices are hardwired, right? So it's not like you just plug this into the ODB port. No, this was actually hardwired into the car. So she was a professional car thief. So I'd hire a private investigator because the police wouldn't help me because they said it was a civil matter to track down the car. When they found it, it was like covered in human piss, which was disgusting on the inside, and animal, tons of drugs. But yeah, after looking into the lady's Facebook, I saw she was a drug addict, stopped paying me, and everything she told me was a lie. So that's another thing I learned early on in the journey. Don't be so trusting of everybody, you know? Most people are good, I believe that, but trust and then verify. That was a major lesson I had to learn early on. Another thing, don't scale too fast. Make sure you have your foundation in place. One of the hardest things for me was when I got past that 10 car mark was to start automating things because I wanted to make this a business where I could, you know, go on vacation to Florida for 2 weeks if I feel like it in the winter. I didn't want to be running around like I did at the beginning. So from that point to scale, I realized you'd have systems. So I created automations that really helped with the guest communications. I created a lockbox system where I don't have to be present to actually hand over the keys because nobody wants to meet their guests. And it also allowed me to keep my availability super open. So I'm able to compete with the people like Enterprise and other large companies, and they can't compete with me on my hours, which is very big. And then also hiring. So hiring was so important. I was slow to do this because I kept wanting to pay myself the money, to be honest. And I was like, oh, I'll do the work. But then it came to the point where I'm like, what am I doing? I'm just buying myself a job at this point. And then I was able to go through a few employees, and that was a whole nother challenge. Probably I would say that was the hardest part for me out of everything was hiring. Because I had some people, I probably went through 6 employees since I started. Some were great. Some had to leave because they went to college, stuff like that. Had another employee who really liked, he did a great job, honestly. But then he stole from me, and I can't forgive that. Like once you steal, it's over. It's like, get out of here. Like, you're lucky that's all I do is fire you. And now I have my best employee ever who manages the entire fleet. So we have a full-time detailer and then a manager. And then I just do the, basically oversee the larger operation as a whole. I still like to deal with insurance, stuff like that, but really now I get to just direct people and then come to Florida, right? But yeah, hiring is a major issue too. And when you guys work with us at carrentalcoach.com, we'll help you hire, show you how to fire, and show you how to automate everything as well, so you don't run into those issues I did. But like the old adage says, hire slow, fire fast. As soon as somebody proves that they're not reliable, get rid of them. People usually don't change. It's sad, but true. So hiring was another big issue. And then another part of the journey was finding the right mechanics. So when you have over 50 cars, cars are gonna break. Cars always break down, they always have issues. So you need to make sure you have good connections in the industry. So you want to make like corporate accounts, whether it's in a Meineke, Firestone, and you want to have a few mechanics in your back pocket. And you want to make sure that they know that you're going to be using them a lot, so you get those discounts and build relationships with them. A lot of the car rental business and just the car business in general is about relationship building. So you really want to make sure that you get people that are not only really good at their job, but reasonably priced, because that's where a lot of Turo hosts lose their money, is repairs on the vehicles. So you really want to make sure you're not one of those people. And guys, I get it too, right? What happens if I rent my car and it doesn't make any money? Or what happens if I rent my car and somebody damages it? I get those fears completely. I had those same fears when I started, but guess what? You're going to make money and your car's going to be protected as long as you have the right system in place. It took me a long time to learn it, but now that I've mastered it, I have no fear with my cars being wrecked. I'm actually happy sometimes because we make money as long as nobody's hurt, thankfully we've never had somebody actually hurt in an accident with our cars, even though we've had some pretty bad totals. But not because our cars were in bad shape, because some of these people, man, they just can't drive. It's crazy. Being in the car rental business, I never realized how many people can't drive a vehicle. And these are on perfect sunny days too. It's not like, it's like winter storm and they're driving a rear-wheel drive vehicle, no. But do not be scared about not making money. Do not be scared about not being paid on insurance claims, because at the end of the day, you'll get paid on all of that, and as long as you have the right systems in place. But if you don't have the right systems and you don't do the research and you don't put the work in, then you might not make any money doing it. So again, like I said, very important to make sure you have your insurance in place, make sure you have the cars picked out correctly so you do make money. You want to make sure you're not financing them, taking on too much leverage if you don't know what you're doing. So scale slowly, which I completely get. So I understand that fear completely, but have the right systems in place and know what you're doing. You'll make money, and if the car's ever damaged, you will be completely covered. And a lot of people in our videos, they say, well, what if I mess up? What if I make a mistake? What if I can't do this properly? Well, I'm a seasoned entrepreneur at this point. I'm in my 30s and I've had 4 different businesses. A lot of failures. And honestly, I know it sounds cliche, and I used to think it sounded cliche too until I went through it, but really the only way to fail is to never try. So you're gonna learn as you go. You're gonna learn from your mistakes. And if you have mentorship, like we offer at carrentalcoach.com, or anybody that's been in the business that can help you, that's gonna make a big difference. When I started the Turo business and started to scale, I partnered with a guy in Arizona. Well, when I say partnered, I hired him for mentorship. And that really helped me avoid a lot of mistakes. But you're gonna make mistakes, but you're gonna learn from them and you're gonna keep going like I did. I had so many issues at the beginning where I thought, is this business even worth it? But then once you get the right systems, the research, and the preparation, it is 100% worth it every single time. And then another thing I hear you guys say, well, what if I don't have the time to do this? I'm a big believer in people prioritize what they think is important, and you'll make time for anything that is important. But remember guys, I'm in Florida now for 2 weeks, and this business is running itself without me having to do anything. Actually, I'm not even gonna lie. I did have to make one call to my manager. It was only like 30 minutes just to go over a couple things, just to brief me, because I'm a little bit of not control freak, but I always like to know what's going on. I can't relax unless I do. But as far as time goes, this business doesn't take me much time at all. Sure, it's gonna take you a lot of time to get started. You're gonna have to put some work in, you're gonna have to buy these cars, you're gonna have to learn, you're gonna have to work with somebody, but you're able to automate this. We have a lot of clients that we work with that actually have 9 to 5 still, but do this as a side hustle. And they love it because they're making passive income while still building their job. Then we have other people that transition from their 9 to 5, and from that point, they went into Turo and the car rental business full force. So really it all depends on your goals, what you want to do. But again, when you say, oh, I don't have time to do this, well, I mean, you have to make time for what's important. And like I said, we were able to automate everything. So not worried about that. That's something that is not an obstacle. Now guys, I've been an entrepreneur for a while, but I said I've worked other jobs too. But I realized a few years ago, I could never work a 9 to 5 again, and never will. Nothing against that. In certain times in life, you need to do that. You need to get in the trenches, build your income back up, things like that. But I realized I would rather fail and own my own business than to work for somebody else building theirs. So I never want to go back to a 9 to 5. I never will. And after I was able to start earning 6 figures from my car rental business, and that's what I pay myself. I pay myself 6 figures income. I realized I'll never go back. So now I gotta ask you guys, what's stopping you, right? You know, it's early in the year, it's February right now, everybody's still riding high on their New Year's resolutions, but what is keeping you from actually doing this? A lot of you guys have been talking about doing it, thinking about it, but what is that? Is it, I mean, at the end of the day, you do have the time. Sure, there's risk with anything. It's riskier to never get started, but really guys, what is stopping you? If you have the right mentorship, you have the drive. The drive's a big thing. You can't be lazy in business. You can't really teach that, but like I said, what is really stopping you? That's something you have to think about yourself. Are you just somebody that doesn't want to do it, or you do? And you have to make that decision. And as always, you guys can go to carrentalcoach.com, fill out our quick 60-second survey, see if you qualify to work with us. And if you do, you'll work with me one-on-one, and we'll get your car business going. Please make sure to like this video and subscribe. And wow, I really need to shave. All right, I'll see you guys in the next one.